The typhoon affected more than thousands of people, and the money they do have until ultimately only lasts them about 6 months. We want people to themselves become part of change by giving back to people in order for them to restore their homes and have food. Also, we chose this because some of my family got affected by the typhoon. For example, most of my family lost their houses and their own belongings.
Class, we learned about how art with a social conscience can cause change. Art with a social conscience must reflect a social, political, or historical issue. It must persuade and affect points of view, provoke change and inspire. It must become a target for anger and find common ground and bring peace. Street art is an example of art with a social conscience because it brings to light an issue into the public, and it carries out all of these components while using ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos being trust, pathos being emotion, and logos being logic in order to get the crowd to agree with their ideas. Banksy is an example of a street art with a social conscience. He uses his art to bring out social issues within communities. Another type of art with a social conscience is protest art. It must itself be a form of protest or cause protest. For example, the War series by Nancy Spiro. It was a collection of art pieces protesting the Vietnam War. The images were made to make people uncomfortable in order for it to not happen again. She used helicopters as the main focus of her art pieces because that was what she saw as a symbol for the war. The last thing we learned in our English class was about protest poetry. Protest poetry must reflect an issue that is currently affecting the poet. Fully Breaks, who created the piece I Will Not Let Exam Day Decide My Fate. He used the protest poetry to bring out an issue that was currently happening to him and the students around him and got a large amount of publicity. Overall, we learned that in Miss Hart's class how to use art in order to create change.
In Spanish, we learn about personal experiences affect art, social movements, and propaganda. An example of an artist's personal experiences affecting their art was Picasso's Blue Period and Rose Period. In Picasso's Blue Period, he was depressed due to the loss of his close friend, and he was poor, so all he really could afford was blue paint. During his Rose Period, he got wealthy from selling paintings during his Blue Period, so he could afford brighter tones, and he was in love, causing him to show more life in his paintings.
In history, we learned about how nonviolent and violent actions could be used to create change. Gandhi was an example of a leader who inspired people in India to use nonviolent protests and civil disobedience to cause change. Civil disobedience is a form of protest where people refuse to buy from other people who go against what they believe. Indians use this method by refusing to buy salt from the British and creating their own salt. They also used nonviolent protests so they could make the British look bad if they hurt them or put them in jail for using nonviolent protests.
In math class, we did most of our Facebook activity. We checked statistics and made probabilities. We learned how to make probabilities about how many actual men and women we have, and how to get more engagement on our page. So this is our Facebook page. Over the 3 weeks of intersession, we have achieved 107 likes on our page. On our page, we have reached 70% women and 30% men. Our page reached mostly teens ages 13 to 17, just like our prediction. The most popular post on our page was our artwork. It got 97 people to engage and 9 likes. Altogether, our page got 104 likes and reached 284 people, and we also got someone to donate from our page to one of the Philippine organizations, which was one of our goals from the beginning.
At the LACMA, we saw art pieces that had to do with some of the things we had learned in our classes. One example is an art piece called Camille the Hairdresser Does Fiona's Hair. It had to do with this little girl and her childhood memories. That is an example of personal experiences affecting someone's art. The second example is art with a social conscience. It was an art piece called Tule Lake. It was about Tule Lake, which is a concentration camp that Americans with the Japanese descent were sent to during World War II. That is art with a social conscience because it is an art piece that reflects a historical issue. One of the organizations that we came in contact with was CARE. It was also one of the organizations that we would put the link up to on our Facebook so that people could be able to come in contact with them and donate. On On their Facebook was a link to their actual website where we would find the number and be able to come in contact with them. The woman on the phone then told us how to use their methods to properly spread our message because they had already engaged with a huge amount of people who had liked their page and already donated.
It's like you're trying to get to heaven in a hurry, and the queue was shorter than you thought it'd be.